So I've been wanting to make a video about legacy characters for a couple of years. The importance of them is undeniable, and having them sometimes so easily dismissed by people is just mind-blowing to me, and I just can't seem to wrap my head around it. If you're new to comics or not deep into the world of superhero comics, you're probably wondering what the hell is a legacy character? And the easiest way to describe them is a character who takes up a mantle after the stepping down or loss of a previous hero. Some major ones would be someone like Wally West for the Flash mantle after Barry's death, Miles for Peter in the Ultimate Universe, Kamala for Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel, and Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern after Hal turns evil. Over the many years in comics, legacy characters were introduced in various ways. One of the two biggest ways is usually either handed down from a mentor, or as the mentor gains a new title or retires and gives that title to this new person who takes up that title. Did I confuse you with all the titles there? Probably. We've seen this happen with Carol as she becomes Captain Marvel and Kamala becomes Miss Marvel. The second biggest way things happen with legacy characters is, well, death. This happens more often with characters like Miles take over for Peter when he dies, or Dick taking over the Batman mantle after Bruce is thought to be dead. Now, legacy characters don't always stick around. I think the biggest reason people seem to have issues is sometimes they feel very temporary. And that can be true. There's characters like Miles, Kyle, Wally, who become staple characters for years as the legacy hero to the takeover. Then there's characters that had the spotlight for a very small amount of time and then it was ripped away from them, like Lee Price's Venom, which, let's be honest, that's for the better. He was horrible. Or Riri as Iron Man, which only lasted like 15 issues before she became her own hero. On the flip side, a lot of people who embrace legacy characters sometimes have to deal with the other side of that. For example, me myself, I grew up really enjoying Kyle as Green Lantern, as I said in my video I made earlier this year. He's a great character with a lot of relatable factors, and he just always kind of connected with me. Now, he's Green Lantern for years, most of the 90s and even early 2000s, a character I finally connected to, and then DC decides to bring Hal back because, well, the writer wants it done, and bam, Kyle is shoved to the sidelines. Now, luckily, he got a good co-op series with Guy, but it was never quite the same throughout the years, and Kyle just becomes less and less of a presence in the DC universe. And this, personally to me, sucks ass. So why do I find legacy characters so important? Well, unlike self-created indie or manga work, there's usually a start, middle, and end to a story and characters, but with superhero comics, at least Marvel and DC, they don't have that. There's always a start, there's usually a middle forever, which is an end to some characters, but never really, because that's why we have legacy characters, which is, to me, a good thing. But for a lot of people, superhero comics are a good way to get into a fantasy world, a world where characters can live on forever and mean something to people, and that's a wonderful thing. And with legacy characters, they simply create to get new readers into their work. So I'm a comic nerd. I'm in my mid-30s, so it's safe to say that not every legacy character is going to connect with me. I like a lot of them, especially characters like Miles. I think they work really well, and I enjoy about 90% of his comics, which is a huge margin. But then there's characters like Miss Marvel, which I appreciate the character and the impact that she has for the younger generation and readers, and I understand why she's important. For me, though, I just don't really connect a lot of times with her stories because they are aimed for a younger audience or even a different audience. Listen, I'll be the first to say when I got into DC Comics heavy, like really invested my time, it was actually right about the time of Bruce's supposed death. I had no real interest in Bruce. Old grumpy guy, mad at the world for his dead parents. You know, it's just not my cup of tea in my late teens to early 20s. However, Dick Grayson took over, this kind, sweet, adventurous, funny Dick Grayson, and I had to check it out. And bam, I was sucked in. Batman and Robin, two legacy characters, being Dick as Batman and Damian as the new Robin, got me completely enthralled with the Bat family and the universe. And this is a perfect example why I can't get enough of the world that I am still heavily invested into 15 years later. But another reason why legacy characters can be so very important is relatability. Most of us don't have powers to lift a bus, of course, despite that actually being pretty cool if we did, but superheroes don't connect to us because of that. They connect to us because of what they stand for, and characters like Miles getting to don the spider mask, it's empowering. I distinctly remember one of my favorite memories was going inside a comic store after Spider-Verse came out, and this young kid, I'd say maybe 9 or 10, came in and asked if we had a Spider-Man comics, and the owner said, "Sure, we have plenty," and she handed him the newest issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and he said, "No, not this guy, I want the new Spider-Man," and she handed him the newest issue of Miles Spider-Man comic, and his face lit up. And in that moment, it was like almost like deja vu from when I was in the comic shop as a kid and I got my first copy of Spider-Man, and seeing this scrawny, nerdy, kind of loser, but always trying to do the right thing in Ultimate Spider-Man, helping and saving people. That very moment that I flipped the page and saw this kid just being a hero, that really stuck with me 20 plus years later. A kid from New York City, just like me, and I connected to him, and it made a huge impact to me. And in that moment, that probably happened to that kid. Now, will he spend his paychecks buying mass amount of comics like me? I sure hope not. But he got to see himself in a superhero, got to see an icon that mattered to him, fiction or not. And the impact of legacy heroes has no bounds. And it lets heroes that have a big brand, like Captain America, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, or even Batman, letting new heroes or new characters of all races and gender step into the shoes and fulfill being a hero. And that's a reason why a lot of these legacy characters are so important. Relatability. Listen, never listen to the guy who says, "I'm going to stop reading if you do this to this character," because your goal as a creator should never be to appease the readers. They may stop, or it might just be an excuse to stop. Your goal should always be introducing new people to the hobby. Comics, movies, manga, books, so on. Your goal should be new readers, new watchers, primarily the young, because guess what? The old won't be here nearly as long. So yes, that is the reason why legacy characters are so important to me. I labeled my reasons. Hell, some of my favorite superheroes ever are simply legacy characters. But I also even go back and read pre-legacy because of how much of an impact the legacy character had. And I think that's extremely important. It got me into more comics, and that's all that we should want when reading comics. So, my question to you guys is, what are some of your favorite legacy heroes? Any that made an impact on you so much that you instantly were like, this is one of my favorite characters ever? I'd love to hear below, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and have a wonderful day and go read some comics.